Alrighty, sorry about the late start. Welcome back to Wordy Wednesdays. I'm your intrepid narrator, Fragath, and today we're going to be reading more of Downbelow Station by C.J. Cherryh, or in, I think that's Russian, or in the Cyrillic, The World of Pell. Um, that says book 2. We are on to book 4. So, let's see. Yep, that's where we had set it up. Very good. So, a bunch has happened. Mostly last week was about establishing what is the new status quo now that the Mazian fleet, or Maziani, have taken over Pell. I'm going to have to close my window. One sec. Sorry about that. Someone with a lawnmower could get distracting. Hopefully nobody can hear it now. So establishing the new status quo, which is the Mazian fleet now has taken over Pell. For all intents and purposes, they're running the show. This includes down below on the planet itself, which unfortunately, what's his name? The older of the Constantine sons, Emilio. Emilio wound up having the Downers take most of their resources away so that the fleet doesn't have them. Unfortunately, the fleet folks are pretty jumpy, so when one of the when it's what's your name, Satin, Bluetooth, and Bigfellow were traveling to see if they could. I think their goal was to find what's her name, the wife of Angelo Constantine, Lily. Possibly Lily. Um, anyway, they're looking for this person, and Bounder's like, I know, or not Bounder, but Bigfellow is like, I know the way, and he doesn't, and unfortunately opens an airlock, which causes a bunch of the fleet soldiery to jump and shoot him and kill him to death, which is unfortunate. Nobody is happy about this at all. Um, let's see, was there anything else significant? Oh, right. Basically, Union has established that they had planned for the Mazian fleet to take over Pell, and they already had a man on the inside, which we, the audience, knew, and John Lucas knew, but the Mazian fleet does not, and are just waiting for the opportune moment to jump them, pretty much, and get rid of them once and for all. That's about it, I think. So yeah, let's get rockin' and rollin'. Rockin' and a rollin'. There we go. Much better. Enunciate your consonants. And yeah, we'll have some more down below station going on. Book 4, Chapter 1. 1. Pell, October 10th, 2352, 1100 hours. The station was calmer. Queries to legal affairs had begun, and that was a good indication that the tension on the station was easing. The input file was full of queries about military actions, threatened lawsuits, indignant protests from merchants on station who felt damages were due them for the continued curfew on the docks. There were protests from the merchanter ship Finity's End, which is actually the title of one of the books. Um, we'll get around to. There were protests from the merchanter ship Finity's End regarding a missing youth, the object of much anxiety, and in the theory that one of the military crews could have swept him up in impressment. The fact that the youth was probably in some station sleepover with a current infatuation from some other ship. Oh, whoops. I don't know how I misread that. In fact, the youth was probably in some station sleepover with a current infatuation from some other ship. Comp was quietly carrying out a card use search, not an easy matter, for merchanter passes were not in such frequent use as stationer cards. Damon entertained hopes of finding him safe, refused to take alarm until the record search had come in. He had seen too many of these come across his desk only to discover a young merchanter who had had a falling out with his family or drunk too much to listen to vid. The whole thing was more security's problem at this level, but security had its hands full, its men and women standing guard duty with haggard eyes and short tempers. LA could at least punch comp buttons and take up some of the clerical work. Another killing in queue. Another killing in queue. It was depressing, and there was absolutely nothing they could do but note the fact. There was a report of a guard under suspension, accused of smuggling a case of Downer wine into queue. Some officer had decided the problem should not wait, when it was likely there was petty smuggling going on everywhere among the merchanters out there. The man was being made an example. He had 3 postponed hearings in the afternoon. They were likely to be postponed again, because the council was meeting and the Board of Justices was involved in that. He decided to agree with the defender to that effect and put the message through, reserving the afternoon instead for the disposal of more queries that the lower levels of the office could not handle. And having disposed of that, he swung his chair about and looked back at Josh, who sat dutifully reading a book on the auxiliary unit and trying not to look bored as he ought to be. And trying not to look as bored as he ought to be. "Hey," Damon said. Josh looked at him. "Lunch? We can take a long one and work out at the gym." "We can go there?" "It's open." Josh turned the machine off. Damon rose, leaving everything on hold, walked over and gathered up his jacket, felt after cards and papers to be absolutely sure. Mazian's troops still stood guard here and there, as unreasonable as they ever had been. Josh likewise put on a jacket. They were about the same size, and it was borrowed. Lending, Josh would accept, if not giving, augmenting his small wardrobe so that he could come and go in the offices without undue attention. Damon held the door button, instructed the office outside to delay calls for 2 hours. "Back at 1," the secretary acknowledged, and turned to take an incoming call. Damon motioned Josh on through into the outer corridor. "A half an hour at the gym," Damon said, "then a sandwich at the concourse. I'm hungry." "Fine," Josh said. He looked nervously about him. Damon looked too, and felt uneasy. The corridors had very little traffic even yet. People were just not trusting the situation. Some troops stood, distantly visible. "The troops should all be pulled back," he said to Josh, "by the end of this week. Our own security is taking over entirely in white. Green maybe in 2 days. Have patience. We're working on it." "They'll still do what they want," Josh said somberly. "Huh. Did Mallory, after all?" A shadow came on Josh's face. "I don't know. When I think about it, I still don't know." "Believe me." They had reached the lift, alone. A trooper stood at the corner of another corridor, a fact in the tail of the eye, nothing remarkable. He pushed the code for the core. Had a bit of good news come in this morning. My brother called up, said things are smoothing out down there. I'm glad, Josh murmured. The trooper moved suddenly, came toward them. Damon looked. Others further down the hall started moving, all of them at a near run. Abort that! The first trooper snapped, reaching them. She reached for the... She's got a very deep voice. She reached for the panel herself. We're on a call. I can get you a priority, Damon said, to be rid of them. The move indicated trouble. He thought of them shoving stationers around on other levels. Do it. He took his card from his pocket, thrust it into the slot, and coded his priority. The lights went red. The rest of the troopers arrived as the car did, and armored soldiers pushed them aside as the troops all crowded in, leaving them there. The car whisked away, non-stop for whatever destination they had coded from inside. There was not a trooper left in the corridor. Damon looked at Josh, whose face was pale and set. We take the next car, Damon said with a shrug. He was himself disturbed, and quietly coded in Blue 9. Eileen? Josh asked. Want to get down there, he said. You come with me. If there's trouble, it's likely to end up on the dockside. I want to get down there. The car delayed in coming. He waited several moments and finally used his card a second time, a second priority. The lights went red, signifying a car on priority call, then blinked, signifying nothing available. He slammed his fist against the wall, cast a second look at Josh. It was far to walk, easier to wait for a car to free itself, quicker in the long run. He walked over to the nearest comm unit, keyed in on priority while John stood waiting. I think they mean Josh. He walked over to the nearest comm unit, keyed in on priority while Josh stood waiting by the lift doors. Hold the car if it comes, he said to Josh, punched the call in. Comm Central, this is Damon Constantine on emergency. We're seeing troops pulling out on the run. What's going on? There was a long delay. Mr. Constantine, a voice came back, this is a public comm unit. Not at the moment, Central. What's going on? General alert. Emergency posts, please. What's going on? Comm had cut itself off. A measured siren began to sound. Red lights began to pulse in the overheads. People came out of the offices, looked at one another as if hoping it was a drill, or mistaken. His own secretary was outside, far down the hall. Get back inside, he shouted. Get those doors shut. People moved backward, retreated into offices. The red light by Josh's shoulder was still blinking, indicating no car available. Every car in the system must have jammed up down at the docks. Come on, he said to Josh, motioned toward the end of the hall. Josh looked confused, and he strode over, caught Josh by the arm. Come on. There were others in the hall, farther on. He snapped an order at them, cleared them out, not blaming them. There were others besides Constantines who had loved ones scattered about the station, children in school and nurseries, people in hospital. Some ran ahead of them, refusing orders. A station security agent shouted out another order to halt, ignored, laid a hand on his pistol. Let them go, Damon snapped. Let be. Sir. The policeman's face relaxed from a grimace of panic. Sir, I'm not getting anything over comm. Keep that gun holstered. You learn those reflexes from the troops? Stand your post. Calm people down. Help them where you can. There's a scramble going on. Could even be a drill. Ease up. Sir. They walked on toward the emergency ramp in the quiet hall. Not running. A Constantine could not run. Spread panic. He walked, trying to hold off panic in himself. No time, Josh said under his breath. By the time the alert gets here, the ships are on us. If Mazian's been caught at dock... Got militia and 2 carriers out from station, Damon said, and remembered all at once who Josh was. He caught his breath, gave him a desperate look, met a face as worried as his own. Come on, he said. They reached the emergency ramp, heard shouting, loud as they opened the doors. Runners were headed down it from other levels. Slow down! Damon yelled at those who passed him, and they did, several turns, but a few became many, and suddenly there were more coming up, the noise increasing, more running. The transport system jammed everywhere, and all the levels pouring into the spiral well. Take it easy! Damon shouted, grabbed shoulders physically and tried to slow it, but the rush accelerated, bodies jamming in, men, women, and children, impossible now even to get out of it. The doors were full of people trying to go down. The ducks! He heard shouted. It spread like fire, with the red light of alarm burning in the overhead, the assumption that had been seething in Pell since the troops came, that someday it would come, that the station was under attack, that evacuation was underway. The mass pressed down, and there was no stopping it. The reason the mass is pressing down, of course, is because the station is shaped like a ring. So the docks are on the outside of the ring, so you'd be going down from their perspective to the docks. Due to the what's it called? Centrifugal force pushing them down that way, but also because that's where the docks are located. 2. Norway, 1105. CFX, night, 189-8989-687. Easy, easy essay. Easy. Scorpion 12, 000. End it. Signy keyed back acknowledgement and turned to Graf with a wide sweep of her hand. Hit it! Graf relayed, and go sounded throughout the ship. Warnings flared, spreading to dockside. Troops outside finished stripping the umbilicals. We can't take them, Signy said when Di Jans fretted in calm. It sat ill with her to abandon men. They're all right. Umbilicals clear, Graf shouted across, off comm. It was a go when ready from Europe, which had left its troops already moving out. Pacific was moving. Tibet's rider was still heading in behind the wave of the original message, signaling with its presence what Tibet had already sent, and what was happening on the fringes of Pell's system was as old as the light-bound signal that came reporting it. Ships inbound, more than an hour ago. The lights on Norway's main board flicked green, a steady ripple of them, and Signy released clamp and set Norway free, with the troops who had made it aboard still hastening for security. Norway moved null for a moment under the gentle puffs of directionals and undocking vents, continued the roll of her frame, and cut in main thrust with a margin that skimmed Australia's clearance and probably set off alarms all over Pell. They acquired hard G, the inner cylinder under combat sync, rolling to compensate stresses. Weight bore down, eased, slammed down again. They came to heading, with a clutter of merchanters in lower plane, Europe and Pacific ahead of them, Australia breaking clear behind. Atlantic would be moving any second. India's Q was on station and headed for his ship. Africa's Pori was downworld. Africa would move out under its lieutenant's command and rendezvous with Pori shuttling up from Downbelow, running tail guard at best. The inevitable was on them. That rider was some minutes behind Tibet's message, insurance. Its message was reaching them now, and a chatter of further transmission from Tibet itself, and North Pole's voice added itself, along with the alarm of militia ships helplessly in the path of the strike. Tibet was engaged, trying to make the incoming fleet dump speed to deal with them. North Pole was moving. Merchanter vessels serving as militia were altering course. Slow ships, short haulers, at a standstill compared to the speed of the incoming fleet. They could slow it if they had the nerve. If. Riders turned, Scanop said in her ear. She saw it on screen. The rider had gotten their acknowledgement minutes ago, had put about. That scan image was meeting them now. Longscan Comp had put the rest of the arc together, and the Comp Tech had reasoned the rest by human intent. The yellow fuzz going off from the red approach line was Longscan's new estimate of the ridership's position. The old estimate faded to faint blue, mere warning to watch that line of approach in case. They were headed right down it in outgoing plane, while the incoming rider was obliged to go nadir. And they were all streaming out together, right down the line. Signy gnawed her lip, cautioned scan and comm monitor to keep up with events all around the sphere, fretting that Mazian had hauled them out in one vector only. Come on, she thought, with the taste of one disaster in her mouth. No more like Viking. Give us a few options, man. CFX, Night, 189-9090-687, Niner Niner Niner, Sphinx, 222, Triplet, Doublet, Quartet, Wisp, End it. New orders. The late ships were given the other vectors. Pacific and Atlantic and Australia moved on to new courses, slow motion flowering of the pattern to shield the system. Three. Pell, Station Master's offices. Merchanter hammer to ECS in vicinity. Mayday, mayday, mayday. Union carriers moving. 12 carriers our vicinity. Going for jump. Mayday, mayday, mayday. Swan's eye to all ships. Run, 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 run. ECS Tibet to all ships. Relay. Over an hour old, proliferating through the system in relay through the comm of every ship receiving and still going, like an echo in a madhouse. Angelo leaned to the comp console and keyed through to dockside, where the shock of a massive pullout still had crews spilling out on emergency call. Military crews had handled it, their own way, undocked without interval. Central was in chaos, with a pending G crisis if the systems could not adjust to the massive kickoff. There were palpable instabilities. Comm was jammed. And for nearly 2 hours the situation on the rim of the solar system had been in progress, while the message flashed its light-bound way toward them. Troops were left on the dock. Most had been aboard already, barracked on ship. Some had not made it, and military channels on station echoed with incomprehensible messages, angry voices. Why they had pulled the troops, why they had delayed to board those they could with attack incoming. The implication of that was the liberty of the fleet to run out on them. Mazian's order. Emilio, he thought distractedly. The schematic of Downbelow on the left wall screen flickered with a dot that was Pori's shuttle. He could not call. No one could. Mazian's orders. Calm silence. Hold pattern. Traffic control was broadcasting to merchanters in orbit. It was all they could say. Com queries flowed from merchanters at dock, faster than operators could answer them with pleas for quiet. Union was bound to have done this. Anticipated, Mazian had flashed him, in what direct communication he had gotten. For days the captains had stayed near the ships, troops jammed aboard in discomfort, not in courtesy to station, not in response to their requests to have the troops out of the halls. Prepared for pullout. Despite all promises, prepared for pullout. He reached for the comm button to call Alicia. Alicia, that's her name, who might be following this on her screens. Sir? His secretary, Mills, came on comm. Security requests you come to comm central. There's a situation down in green.
What situation?
Crowds, sir. He thrust himself from his desk, grabbed his coat. Sir? He turned. His office door opened unasked. Mills there protesting the intrusion of John Lucas and a companion. "Sir," Mills said, "I'm sorry. Mr. Lucas insisted. I told him—" Angelo frowned, vexed at the intrusion and at once hoping for assistance. John was able, if self-interested.
I need some help,
He said, and his eyes flicked in alarm at the small movement of the other man's hand to his coat, the sudden flash of steel. Mills failed to see it. Angelo cried aloud as the man slashed Mills, scrambled back as the man flung himself at him. Hale. He recognized the face suddenly. Mills shrieked, bleeding, sinking against the open doorway. There were screams from the outer office. The blow struck, a numbing shock. Angelo reached for the driving hand and met the weapon protruding from his chest, stared disbelievingly at John. At hate. There were others in the doorway. Shock welled up in him, with the blood.
Vasily.
The voice said over. Oh, 4. Q. Sorry.
Vasily.
The voice said over com.
Vasily, do you hear me?
Kressich, at his desk, sat paralyzed. It was Collody, of those who sat about him, hunched and waiting, who reached past him and punched the respond button. "I hear," Kressich said, past the knot in his throat. He looked at Collody. In his ears was the buzz of voices out on the docks, people already frightened, already threatening riot. "Keep 'em safe," Collody said to James, who was over the 5 others who waited outside. "Keep him very safe." And Collody went. They had waited, had hovered about calm, one of them always near it, gathered here in the confusion. It was on them now. It was on them now. After a moment there was a rise in the noise of the mob outside, a dull, bestial sound which shook the walls. Kressich bowed his face into his hands, stayed so for a long time, not wishing to know. "The doors!" he heard finally, a shout from outside. "The doors are open!" Five. Green 9. They ran, stumbling and breathless, jostling others in the corridors, a sea of panicked people, red dyed in alarm lights. A siren still went. There was a queasiness of G as station systems struggled to keep themselves stable. "It's the docks," Damon breathed, his vision blurring. A runner hit him, and he fended the body off, pushed his way, with Josh in his wake, where the ramp opened onto 9. "Mazian's peeled off." It was all that made sense. Shrieks broke out, and there was a massive backflow in the crowd that brought all the press to a stop. Of a sudden, traffic began to go the other way, people retreating from something. There were frantic screams, bodies jammed against them. "Damon!" Josh yelled from behind him. It was no good. They were pushed back, all of them, against the crush of bodies behind. Shots streaked overhead, and the whole jammed mess quivered and rang with screams. Damon got his arms in front of him for leverage, to keep from being suffocated. Ribs were compressed. Then the rear of the press turned, running in panic down some route of escape, and the crush became a battering flood. He tried to stand in it, having his own direction. A hand caught his arm, and Josh caught up with them. And Josh caught up with him, staggered as the mob shoved and stampeded, and they tried to fight the current. More shots. A man went down. More than one. Hit. The fire was going into the crowd. "Stop shooting!" Damon shouted, still with a wall of people in front of him, a wall diminishing as if a scythe were hitting it. "Cease fire!" Someone grabbed him from the back, pulled him as fire came through.
He got the edge of one and jerked in pain, scrambling for balance in the rout, running now. It was Josh with him, pulling him along in their retreat. A man's back exploded an arm's length ahead of them, and the man fell under the others. "This way!" Josh yelled, jerked him left, down a side corridor where part of the route was going. He went, that direction as good as the other, saw a way to double back through, redoubled his effort to get to the docks, running through the maze of secondary corridors back again to 9. They made it as far as 3 intersections, frantic people scattering everywhere, at every intersection of the corridors, staggering in the flux of G. And then screams broke out in the halls ahead. "Look out!" Josh yelled, catching at him. He gasped air and turned, ran where the curving inner wall rose up and into what was going to turn into a blank wall, the sector division. Not blank. There was a way. Josh yelled and tried to drag him back when he saw the cul-de-sac. "Come on!" he snapped, and caught Josh's sleeve, kept running as the wall came down off the horizon at them, became level, a blank wall with a painted mural, and at the right a heavy door of a downer hatchway. He leaned up against the wall, fumbled his card out, jammed it in the slot. The hatch opened with a gust of tainted air, and he dragged Josh into it, into virtual dark, numbing cold. The door sealed. Air exchange started, and Josh looked about in panic. Damon reached for the masks in the recess, thrust one at Josh, got one over his own face, and sucked a restricted breath, trembling so that he could hardly get the band adjusted. "Where are we going?" Josh asked, voice changed by the mask. "Now what?" There was a lamp in the recess. He took it, thumbed the light on. He reached for the inner door switch, opened it. Nope, that is what it says. He reached for the inner door switch, opened it, a sound that echoed up and up. A slant of the beam picked out catwalks. They were on a grid, and a ladder went down farther still, into a round tube. G diminished, dizzyingly. He caught at the rail. Eileen. Eileen would be in the worst of it. She would go to cover, get those office doors locked. Had to. He was not able to get through out there. Had to get help. Had to get to help. Reach a point where he could get security forces moving in a front that could stop it. Up. Get up to the high levels. That was White Sector on the other side of that partition. He tried to find a direct access to it, but the beam showed no way. There was no direct connection, section to section, except the docks, except on number 1 level. He remembered that. Complicated lock systems. Downers knew where. He did not. Get to Central, he thought. Get to an upper hall and get to calm. Everything was amiss. G out of balance. The fleet had gone. Maybe merchanters too, throwing them out of stability, and Central was not correcting it. Something was massively wrong up there. He turned, staggered as G surged sickeningly, grabbed an up-slanted rail, and started climbing. Josh followed. Six. Green Dock. There was no response from Central. The handcom kept giving back the standby, interspersed with static. Eileen thumbed it off and cast a frantic look back at the lines of troops that held Green 9 entry. "Runner," she called. A youth came up to her on the double. They were reduced to this, with calm blacked out. "Get to all the ships round the rim, one to the next as far as you can run, and tell them to pass the word on their own comm if they can. Hold where you are. Tell them, you know what to say. Tell them there's trouble out there and they'll run head on into it if they bolt. Go!" Scan might be out. She had reckoned the blackout the fleet's doing. But India and Africa had gone, leaving troops to hold the dock, troops they had no room to take. And the signal was still being interrupted. No knowing what information the merchanters were getting, or what messages the troops might have gotten over their own comm. No knowing who was in charge of the deserted troops, whether some high officer or some desperate and confused non-com. There was a wall of them at the Niner entries of blue and green docks, a wall of troops facing up the curving horizons, sealing off those same docks from either side, rifles braced and ready, the ceiling of their square. That's Sealing as opposed to Ceil. Ceiling of their square. It's a sealed square. She feared them no less than the enemy incoming. They had fired, turned one mob, killed people. There were still sporadic shots. She had 12 staff members and 6 of them were missing, cut off by the comm blackout. The others were directing dock crew efforts to check the dumped umbilicals against a fatal seal breach. The whole section should be under precautionary seal. If her people up in blue control could get it straightened out. They had dead switches. The whole system jammed by an override. G-flux still hit them at intervals. Fluid mass in the tanks had to be shunted as fast as the lines could jet it their way. Everything in tanks anywhere to compensate. Station had attitude controls. They might be using them. It was terrifying in a huge space like the docks, the up and down of weight, unsettling premonition that at any moment they might get a flux of more than a kilo or two. Okay, so first of all, that paragraph is bonkers. It's very long. Second of all, um, this is a good example of she uses every part of the grammatical buffalo, the punctuation buffalo, rather. Starting with. Okay, so I'm going to read this whole paragraph with punctuation notations included so that you hear just how crazy this is. It starts off totally fine. It rapidly escalates beyond that. Kind of the story of the book, to be honest. Scan might be out, period. She had reckoned the blackout the fleet's doing, semicolon, but India and Africa had gone, comma, leaving troops to hold the dock, comma, troops they had no room to take, semicolon, and the signal was still being interrupted, period. No knowing what information the merchanters were getting, comma, or what messages the troops might have gotten over their own comm, period. No knowing who was in charge of the deserted troops, comma, whether some high officer or some desperate and confused non-com. Period. There was a wall of them at the Niner entries of blue and green docks. Hyphen. A wall of troops facing up the curving horizon, sealing off those same docks from either side, comma, rifles braced and ready, comma, the ceiling of their square, period. She feared them no less than the enemy incoming, period. They had fired, comma, turned one mob, comma, killed people, semicolon. There were still sporadic shots, period. She had 12 staff members and 6 of them were missing, ellipsis, cut off by the calm blackout, period. The others were directing dock crew efforts to check the dumped umbilicals against a fatal seal breach, semicolon. The whole section should be under precautionary seal, hyphen. If her people up in blue control could get it straightened out, colon. They had dead switches, comma. The whole system jammed by an override, period. G-flux still hit them at intervals, semicolon. Fluid mass in the tanks that had to be shunted as fast as the lines could jet it their way, comma. Everything in tanks anywhere, comma, to compensate, semicolon. Station had attitude controls, semicolon. They might be using them, period. It was terrifying in a huge space like the docks, comma, the up and down of weight, comma, unsettling premonition that at any moment they might get a flux of more than a kilo or two, period. So, I challenge myself for you guys. Also because I adore CJ Cherryh's work. And it is my pleasure to bring her to you. So basically, it's a pretty solid recap of what's going on, an explanation of what's going on. There is a lot of information packed into, call it 30 lines. It is a long paragraph. Miss Quen! She turned. The runner had not gotten through. Some ass in the line of troops must have turned him back. She started toward him in haste, toward the line that suddenly, inexplicably, was wavering, facing about toward them, rifles leveled. A shout roared out at her back. She looked to the upcurving horizon, saw an indistinct wavefront of runners coming down that apparent wall toward them, beyond the curtaining section arch. Riot. The seal! She shouted into the useless handcom, dead as it had been. The troops were moving. She was between them and targets. She ran for the far side, the tangle of gantries, heart pounding, looked back again as the line of troops advanced, narrowing their perimeter, passing her by. Some of them taking positions in the cover of the gantries. She thumbed the handcom and desperately tried her office. Shut it down! But the mob was past blue control, might be in it. The noise of the mob swelled, a tide pouring toward them while others were still coming down off the horizon, an endless mass. She realized suddenly the aspect of the distant faces, behavior not panic, but hate. And weapons. Pipes, clubs. The troops fired. There were screams as the first rank went down. She stood paralyzed, not 20 meters from the troops' rear, seeing more and more of the mob pouring toward them over their own dead. Q. Q was loose. They came waving weapons and shrieking, a sound which grew from distant roar to deafening, with no end to their numbers. She turned and ran. She turned, ran, staggering in the flux, in the wake of her own fleeing dock crews, of scattered downers who saw man trouble and sought shelter. The noise grew behind her. She doubled her pace, a hand to her belly, trying to cushion the shock in her stride. There were screams behind her, almost drowned in the roar. They would overrun these troops, too, gain the rifles, coming on by sheer weight of numbers. She looked back, saw Green 9 vomiting forth scattered runners, getting past the troops. Panic showed in their faces. She gasped for air and kept going despite the dull ache in her pelvic arch, dog trotting when she must, reeling in the G surges. Runners began to pass her, a scattered few, at first, then others, a buffeting flood as she passed a white section arch. And on the horizon ahead a tide breaking crossways from Niner entries, thousands upon thousands up the sweep of the horizon, running for the merchanter ships at dock, screaming that merged with the cries behind, men and women screaming and pushing each other. Men passed her in greater and greater numbers, bloody, reeking, waving weapons, shrieking. Oh, I love the rhyme in that. The rhyme in that is dynamite. Men passed her in greater and greater numbers, bloody, reeking, waving weapons, shrieking. A shock hit her back, threw her to a knee, and the man kept running. Another hit her, stumbled, kept going. She staggered up, arm numb, tried for the gantries, the shelter of supports and lines. Shots burst out ahead of her from a ship's access. Quen! Someone yelled. She could not tell the source, looked about, tried to fight the human tide, and stumbled in the press. Quen! She looked about. A hand caught her arm and pulled her, and a gun fired past her head. Two others grabbed her, hauled her through the press. A blow grazed her head, and she staggered, flung her weight then with the men who were trying to pull her through, amid the web of lines and gantries. There were screams and shots. Others reached out to seize them, and she tensed to fight, thinking them the mob, but a wall of bodies absorbed her and the men with her, merchanter types. Fall back! Someone was yelling, "Fall back! They're through!" They were headed up a ramp to an open hatchway, a cold ribbed tube, glowing yellow-white, a ship's access. "I'm not boarding!" she cried in protest, but she had no wind left to protest anything, and there was nowhere but the mobs. They dragged her up the tube, and those who had held the entry came crowding after as they hit the lock, hurtling in. They jammed up in a crushing press as the last desperate runners surged in. The door hissed and clanged shut, and she flinched. By some miracle, the door had taken no limbs. The inner hatch spilled them into a lift corridor. A pair of big men pushed the others through and steadied her on her feet while a voice thundered orders over comm. Her belly hurt. Her thighs ached. She sank against the wall and rested there until one of them touched her shoulder, a huge man, gentle-handed. "All right," she said. "I'm all right." It was easing, the strain of the run. She pushed her hair back, looked at the men, these two who had been out there with her, heaved through the crowd, shoving rioters out of the way. Knew them, and the patch they wore, black, without device. Finity's end. The ship that had lost a son on the station. The men she had dealt with that morning. Going for their ship, perhaps, and they had gone aside after one of their own, to pull a Quen out of that mob. "Thank you," she breathed. "The captain. Please, I've got to talk to him. Fast." No objections. The big man, Tom, she recalled the name, got his arm about her, helped her walk. His cousin opened the lift door and hit the button inside. They walked out again into a fair-sided center, crowded at the moment by the lack of rotation. Main room and bridge were downmost, bridge forward, and the two brought her that way. Better now, much better. She walked on her own, into the bridge, amid the rows of equipment and the gathered crew. Neihart. Neihart was the ship's family. Viking-based. The seniors were on the bridge, some of the younger crew. Children would be snugged away topside, out of this. She recognized Wes Neihart, captain of the family, seamed and silver-haired, sad of face. "Quen," he said. "Sir." She met the offered hand, declined the seat they offered, leaned against the back of it to face him. "Queue's loose. Comm's out. Please, contact the other ships. Pass word. Don't know what's wrong in Central, but Pell's in dire trouble." "We're not taking on passengers," Neihart said. "We've seen the result of that. So have you. Don't ask it." "Listen to me. Union's out there. We're a shell around this station. Got to stay put. Will you give me comm?" She spoke for Pell, had done so, to this captain, to all the others. But this was his deck, not Pell, and she was a beggar without a ship.
Dockmaster's privilege,
He allowed suddenly, swept a hand toward the boards.
comm's yours.
She nodded gratitude, let them show her to the nearest board, sank into the cushion with a cramp in her lower belly. She put her hand there. "Not the baby," she prayed. She had a numbness in that arm, her back, where she had been hit. Instruments blurred as she reached for the earpiece, and she blinked the board into focus, trying to focus her mind as well as her vision. She punched in the ship to ship. "All ships, record and relay. This is Pell Dock Control. Pell Liaison Eileen Quen aboard Neihart's Finity's End. White Dock. Request that all docked merchanters seal locks and do not request that all docked merchanters seal locks and do not, repeat, negative, admit any stationers to your ships. Pell is not evacuating. Get this much on outside broadcast if you can make it heard on loudspeakers. Station comm is blacked out. Those ships in dock, if you can safely release dock from inside shutdown, do so, but do not undock. Those ships in pattern, hold your pattern. Do not leave pattern. Station will compensate and regain stability. Repeat, Pell is not being evacuated. A military action is in progress in the system. Nothing will be served by evacuating the station. Please play the following section for outside broadcast where possible. Attention! By Dockmaster's authority, all station law enforcers are requested to do their utmost to establish order in whatever areas they are. Do not attempt to go to Central. Stay where you are. Citizens of Pell, you are in serious danger from riot. Establish barricades at all Niner entries and all section lines and prepare to defend them to prevent the movement of destructive mobs. Quarantine has been breached. If you scatter in panic, you will contribute to riot and endanger your own lives. Defend the barricades. You will be able to hold the station area by area. Station COM is blacked out due to military intervention, and the G-flux is due to unauthorized undock of military ships. Stability will be restored as quickly as possible. To any refugee out of quarantine, I appeal to you to contribute your efforts to the establishment of defense lines and barricades along with Pell's citizens. Station will negotiate with you regarding your situation. Your cooperation in this crisis will make a profound impression on Pell's gratitude, and you may be assured of favorable consideration as this situation is stabilized. Please remain where you are, defend your areas, and remember that this station supports your lives too. All merchanters, please cooperate with me in this emergency. If you have information, pass it to me on Finity's End. This ship will serve as dock headquarters during the emergency. Please play ship to ship and broadcast appropriate sections over exterior systems. I am standing by for your contact. Messages flashed back, frantic queries after more information, harsh demands, threats of bolting dock at once. All about her, the folk of Finity's End were making their own preparations for flight. At any moment, she hoped, at any moment, calm might clear, Station Central might come through, bright and sane, bringing contact with command, with Damon, who might be in Central and might not. Not, she hoped, in those corridors with Q run amok. Main day noon, the worst of all times, with most of Pell out away from jobs and shops, in the corridors. Blue Dock was his emergency assignment. He might have tried to come there, would have tried. She knew him. Tears blurred her eyes. She clenched her fist on the arm of the chair, tried to think away the diminishing ache in her belly. White section seal just activated. Word came to them from Sita, which had advantage. Other ships echoed reports of other seals in function. Pell had segmented itself in defense, the first sign that it had defensive reactions left in it. Scan's got something, came panicked word from a crew member behind her. Could be a merchanter out of pattern. Can't tell. She wiped her face and tried to concentrate on all the threads in her hands. Just stay put, she said. If we breach those umbilicals, we've got dead in the thousands out there. Do manual seal. Don't break those connections. Takes time, someone said. We may not have it. So start doing it, she wished them. VII. Pell, Sector Blue 1, Command Central. The red lights which had flared across the boards had diminished in number. John Lucas paced from one to the other post and watched tech's hands, watching scan, watching the activity everywhere they still had monitor. Hale stood guard beyond the windows, in central comm, with Daniels. Clay was here, at one side of the room, Lee Quayle on the other, and others of Lucas Company security, none of the station's own. The techs and directors questioned nothing, working feverishly at the emergencies which occupied them. There was fear in the room, more than fear of the attack outside. The presence of guns, the lasting blackout. They knew, John reckoned, reckoned, they well knew that something was amiss in Angelo Constantine's silence, in the failure of any of the Constantines or their lieutenants to reach this place. A tech handed him a message and fled back to his seat without meeting his eyes. It was a repeated query from Downbelow main base. That was a problem they could defer. For now they held Central and the offices, and he did not intend to answer the query. Let Emilio figure it a military order which silenced Station Central. On the screens, the scan showed ominous lack of activity. They were sitting out there, waiting. He paced the circuit of the room again, looked up abruptly as the door opened. Every tech in the room froze, duties forgotten, hands in mid-motion at the sight of the group which appeared there, civilian, with rifles leveled, with others at their backs. Jessad, two of Hale's men, and a bloodied security agent, one of their own. "Area secure," Jessad reported. "Sir?" A director rose from his post. "Counselor Lucas, what's happening?" "Set that man down!" Jessad snapped, and the director gripped the back of his chair and cast John a look of diminishing hope. "Angelo Constantine is dead," John said, scanning all the frightened faces. "Killed in the rioting, with all his staff. Assassins hit the offices. Get to your work. We're not clear of this yet." Faces turned, backs turned, techs trying to make themselves invisible by their efficiency. No one spoke. He was heartened by this obedience. He paced the room another circuit, stopped in the middle of it. "Keep working and listen to me," he said in a loud voice. "Lucas Company personnel are holding this sector secure. Elsewhere we have the kind of situation you see on the screens. We're going to restore calm for announcement from this center only, and only announcements I clear. There is no authority on this station at the moment but Lucas Company, and to save this station from damage I will shoot those I have to. I have men under my command who will do that without hesitation. Is that clear?" There were no comments, not so much as the turning of a head. It was perhaps something with which they were in temporary agreement, with Pell's systems in precarious balance and Q rioting on the docks. He drew a calmer breath and looked at Jessad, who nodded a reassuring satisfaction. Part 8. The webbery of ladders stretched before and behind, a maze of tubes across the overhead, and it was bitterly cold. Damon shone the beam one way and the other, reached for a railing, sank down on the gridwork as Josh sank down by him, the breather sounds loud, strained. His head pounded. Not enough air, not fast enough for exertion, and the maze they were in branched. There was logic to it. The angles were precise. It was a matter of counting. He tried to keep track.
Are we lost?
Josh asked between gasps. He shook his head, angled the beam up, the way they should go. Mad to have tried this, but they were alive, in one piece.
Next level, he said. Ought to be two. I figure we go out, take a look, how things are out there.
Josh nodded. G-flux had stopped. They still heard noise, unsure in this maze where it came from. Distant shouts. Once a booming shock he thought might be the Great Seals. It seemed better. He hoped. Moved. With a... Okay, so the way this sentence is read out is punctuated, sorry, is it seemed better, semicolon. He hoped, ellipsis, moved, comma, with a clattering ringing of the metal, comma, reached for the rail again and started to climb, comma, the last climb. Okay. It seemed better, he hoped, moved with a clattering ringing of the metal, reached for the rail again, and started to climb, the last climb. He was overwhelmingly anxious, for Eileen, for everything he had cut himself off from in coming this way. No matter the hazard, he had to get out. There was a static sputter. It boomed through the tunnels and echoed.
Calm.
He said. It was coming back together, all of it.
This is a general announcement. We are approaching G stabilization. We ask that all citizens keep to their present areas and do not attempt to cross section lines. There is still no word from fleet, and none is expected yet. Scan remains clear. We do not anticipate military action in the vicinity of this station. It is with extreme sorrow that we report the death of Angelo Constantine at the hand of rioters and the disappearance in violence of other members of the family. If any have reached safety, please contact Station Central as soon as possible. Any Constantine relative or any knowing their whereabouts, please contact Station Central immediately. Counselor John Lucas remains acting station master in this crisis. Please give full cooperation to Lucas Company personnel who are fulfilling security duties in this emergency.
Oh, sorry, that's not John Lucas saying that. We had fun though. No, it's gotta be PA system voice. This is a general announcement. We are approaching G stabilization. We ask that all citizens keep to their present areas and do not attempt to cross section lines. There is still no word from the fleet, and none is expected yet. Scan remains clear. We do not anticipate military action in the vicinity of this station. It is with extreme sorrow that we report the death of Angelo Constantine at the hand of rioters, and the disappearance in violence of other members of the family. If any have reached safety, please contact Station Central as soon as possible. Any Constantine relative, or any knowing their whereabouts, please contact Central Station immediately. Counselor John Lucas remains acting station master in this crisis. Please give full cooperation to Lucas Company personnel who are fulfilling security duties in this emergency. Damon sank down on the steps. A cold deeper than the chill of the metal settled into him. He could not breathe. He became aware that he was crying, tears blurring the light and choking his breath. Announcement, the comm began to repeat. We are approaching G stabilization. We ask that all citizens. A hand settled on his shoulder, pulled him about.
Damon?
Josh said through the noise. He was numb. Nothing made sense.
Dead,
He said, and shuddered.
Oh, God.
Josh stared at him, took the lamp from his hand. Damon thrust himself for his feet, for the last climb, for the access he knew was up there. Josh pulled him hard, turned him around against the solid wall.
Don't go.
Josh pleaded with him.
Damon, don't go out there now.
Josh's paranoid nightmares. It was that look on his face. Damon leaned there, his mind going in all directions, and no clear direction. Eileen.
My father. My mother. That's Blue One. Our guards were in Blue One. Our own guards.
Josh said nothing. He tried to think. It kept coming up wrong. Troops had moved. The fleet had pulled out. Murders instant. In Pell's heaviest security. He turned the other way, the way they had just come, his hands shaking so he could hardly grip the railing. Josh shone the light for him, caught his elbow to stop him. He turned on the steps, looked up into Josh's masked, light-distorted face.
Where?
Josh asked.
I don't know who's in control up there. They say it's my uncle. I don't know.
He reached for the lamp, to take it. Josh surrendered it reluctantly, and he turned, started down the ladders as quickly as he could slide down the steps, Josh following desperately after. Get down again. Down was easy. He hurried at the limit of breath and balance until he was dizzy and the lamp's beam swung madly about the framework and the tunnels. He slipped, recovered, kept descending.
Damon,
Josh protested. He had no breath for arguing. He kept going until his sight was fading from want of air, sank down on the steps, trying to pull air enough through the breather to keep from fainting. He felt Josh leaning by him, heard him panting, no better off.
Dax, Damon said, get down there. Get to ships. Eileen would go there. Can't get through.
He looked at Josh, realized he was dragging another life into this. He had no choices either. He got up, started down again, felt the vibrations of Josh's steps still behind him. The ships would be sealed. Eileen would be there or locked in the offices. Or dead. If the troops had hit him. If, for some mad reason, the station was being disabled in advance of a Union takeover. But John Lucas was supposed to be up there in Central. Had some action failed? Had John somehow prevented them from hitting Central itself? He lost count of the stops for breath, of the levels they passed. Down. He hit bottom finally, a gridwork suddenly wider, did not realize that it was what it was until he searched with the light and stopped finding downward ladders. He walked along the grid, saw the faint glimmer of a blue light. That over an access door. He reached it, pushed the switch. The door slid back with a hiss, and Josh followed him into the lock's brighter light. The door closed, and air exchange started. He tugged down the mask and got a full breath of the air, chill and only slightly tainted. His head was pounding. He focused hazily on Josh's sweating face, marked with the mask, distraught.
Stay here, he said in pity. Stay here. If I get this cleared up, I'll come back. If I don't, decide for yourself what to do.
Josh leaned there, eyes glazed. Damon turned his attention to the door, got his breathing back to normal, rubbed his eyes to clear them, finally pushed the button and put the door in function. Light blinded him. There was shouting out there, screaming, the smell of smoke.
Life support,
He thought with a chill. It opened on one of the minor halls, and he headed out, started running, heard running footfalls behind him, and looked back.
get back, he wished Josh. Get back in there.
He had no time to argue with him. He ran down the hall. Had to be in green sector. It had to be 9 in this direction. All the signs were gone. He saw riot ahead of him, people running scattered through the halls, and some had lengths of pipe, and there was a body in the hall. He dodged it and kept going. The rioters he saw did not look like Pell, unshaven, unkempt. He knew suddenly what they were, and flung everything into his running, pelted down the hall and up a turn, headed as close to the docks as he could get without going into the main corridor. Had to break into it finally, dodged a runner among other runners. There were more bodies on the floor, and looters ran rampant. He shouldered past men who clutched pipes and knives and, some of them, guns. The entry to the dock was closed, sealed. He saw that, staggered aside as a looter came swinging a pipe at him, for no reason more than that he was in the way. Let's reread that. I mangled it. The entry to the dock was closed, sealed. He saw that, staggered aside as a looter came swinging a pipe at him, for no reason more than that he was in the way. The attacker kept going, a half circle that pulled him about and ended against the wall, with Josh, who slammed his head into the wall and came up with the pipe in his hand. Damon whirled and ran for the sealed doors, reached for his pocket, for the card to override the lock.
Constantine!
Someone shouted behind him. He turned, stared at a man, at a gun leveled at him. A length of pipe hurtled out of nowhere and hit the man, and looters scrabbled for the gun, a surging mob. In panic, he whirled, thrust the card for the slot. The door whipped back, with the vast dockside beyond, and other looters. He ran, sucking in the cold air, down the dock toward White Sector, where he saw other great seals in place, the dock seals, 2 levels tall and airtight. He stumbled from exhaustion and caught himself, pelted up the curve toward them, hearing someone close behind him and hoping it was Josh. The stitch that had started in his side unnoticed grew to a lancing pain. Past looted shops with dark, open doors, he reached the wall beside the huge seals, fetched up against the closed door of the small personnel lock, thrust his card into the slot. It was dead. No response. He pushed it harder, thinking it might have failed contact, inserted it a second time. It was cut off. It should at least have lighted the buttons, given him a chance to put through a priority code, or flashed the hazard signal. Damon! Josh reached the door beside him, caught at his shoulder, pulled him around. There were people moving behind them, 30, half 100, from all across the docks. From Green 9, in greater and greater number. They know that you've got a door open, Josh said. They know you've got that kind of access. He stared at them, snatched at his card from the slot. Useless. Blanked. Control had blanked his card. Damon! He grabbed at Josh and ran, and the crowd started forward with a howl. He raced for the open doors, for the shops, into the dark doorway of the nearest. He whirled inside, pushed the button to seal the door. That, at least, worked. The first of the mob hit the door, hammered at it. Panicked faces pressed close to the plastic, lengths of pipe hammered at it, scarring it. It was a security seal, like all the dockfront stores. Pressure tight, windowless, but for that double thick circle. It's going to hold, Josh said. I don't think, he said, that we can get out again. I don't think we can get out of here until they come to get us. Josh looked at him across the space of the window, from the other side of the door, pale in the light that came through it. They blanked my card, Damon said. It stopped working. Whoever's in Station Central just cut off my card use. He looked toward the plastic, on which the gouges were deepening. I think we just trapped ourselves. The hammering continued. Madness raged outside, not assassins, not any sane impulse toward hostage taking, only desperate people with a focus for their desperation. Q residents with a pair of stationers within reach. The scars deepened on the plastic, almost obscuring the faces and hands and weapons. It was remotely possible they could get through it. And if that happened, there was no need of assassins.
And there is a cutaway of the Norway, which I've been meaning to show off. I might have actually done that the first stream of this. I can't remember. More spammers. Okay, where are we? Whoop. Chapter 2. 1. Norway, 1300 hours. It was a waiting game now, probe and vanish. Ghosts. But solid enough out there, somewhere beyond system limits.
Tibet and North Pole had lost contact with the incoming enemy. Union had about faced, at the cost of one of Tibet's riders, at the cost of one of Union's. But it was far from over. The calm flow kept up, calm and quiet out of both carriers. Signy gnawed her lip and stared at the screens before her, while Graf tended op. Norway held position along with the rest of the fleet, having dumped speed, drifted, still not too remote from the mass of Pell 4 and 3 and the star itself. Dead stopped. They had refused to be drawn out, had now to use mass to shelter them from an arrival close at hand. It was not likely that Union would be reckless enough to use jump for entry, not their style, but they took the precaution, sitting targets as they were. Wait long enough and even conservative Union commanders could circle their scan range to find new lines of attack, having probed things. Wolves round the firelight, and themselves trying to sit within it, visible and dead still and vulnerable. Union had room out there, could get a good run started, too fast for them to handle. And for some time there had been bad news coming out of Pell, silence broken, rumblings of serious disorder. From Maziani, persistent silence, and one of them dared breach it with a communication to question.
Come on, she wished Mazian. Turn some of us loose to hunt.
The riders hung off from Norway in widest deployment, like those of the other ships, 27 rider ships, 7 carriers, and 32 militia ships trying to fill up their pattern, indistinguishable on long scan, some of them from rider ships, 2 of them from carriers. Oh, being indistinguishable from carriers, got it. As long as the fleet sat still, not betraying themselves by tight moves and speed, whoever looked at scan had to wonder if some of those slow, steady ships might not be warships disguising their moves. Tibet's rider had gotten back to Mother, and Tibet and North Pole had 7 riders and 11 militia in their area, short haulers incapable of running, turned brave by necessity. They could not get out of the way, so they made part of the screen. As if they could depend on attack coming from that direction. Union had felt at them, pricked at the organism and vanished out of range. It was probably Azov out there, one of Union's oldest, one of the best. Feather touch and faint. He had sucked in more than one commander, too good to die that way. Nerves crawled. The techs on the bridge looked at her from time to time. Silence existed inside as well as among the ships, contagious unease. A comtech turned at his station, looked at her.
Pell situation worsening,
He said off comm. There was a murmur from the other stations.
Mind your business, she snapped, on general address. It's likely to come from any side of us. Forget Pell or we get it in our faces, hear me? I'll vent the crewman who wool gathers.
And to Graf,
Ready status.
a blue light went on in the overhead. That would wake them up. A light flashed on her board, indicating the arms comp board lit, and the arms comper and his aides fully prepared. She reached to the comp board, punched a code for a recorded instruction. Norway's sightseeing eye had begun. Norway's sighting. Norway's sighting eye began to rove toward the reference star in question to perform identifications and to lock in. In case. In case there was something going on unaccounted for in their plans, and Mazian, likewise receiving that Pell chatter, was thinking of running. Their direct beam pickup was trained on Europe, and Europe still had nothing to say. Mazian was thinking, or had made up his mind, and trusted his captains to take precautions. She tapped a signal to the jump text board, as he had already to have noted the other move. The board went live, a stepped-up power flow to the generation vane monitors that gave them options other than real space. If the fleet broke from Pell, chances were they would not all arrive where they were instructed, at the nearest null point. that there would never again be a fleet, nothing between Union and Sol. The calm flow from Pell became grim indeed. Two, Downer access. Men with guns. Keen ears could still pick up the shouts outside, the terrible fighting. Satin shivered at a crash against the wall, trembled, finding no reason for this thing that happened, but that Lucas's had done this. And Lucas's gave orders, in power in the up above. Bluetooth hugged her, whispered to her, urged her, and she came, as silently as the others. The whispers of bare Hisa feet passed above them, below. They moved in dark, a steady flow. They dared no lights, which might guide men to find them. Some were ahead of them, some behind. Old One himself led, the strange Hisa, who had come down from the high places, and commanded them without telling them why. Some had lingered, fearing the strange ones, but there were guns behind, and mad humans, and they would come in haste very soon. A human voice ran out. It does say ran. It might be rang. A human voice rang out far below in the tunnels, echoing up. Bluetooth hissed and pushed, moved faster in his climbing, and Satin scampered along with all her might, heated by this exertion, her fur damp and her hands sliding on the rails where others had grasped them. "Hurry!" a Hisa voice whispered at once at one of the levels, high, high in the up above's dark places, and hands urged them up still another climb, where a dim light shone, making a silhouette of a Hisa who waited there. A lock. Satin tugged her mask into place and scrambled up to the doors, caught Bluetooth's hand, for fear of losing him where Old One should lead. The lock received them. They jammed in with others, and the inner seal gave way on a mass of brown Hisa bodies, hands which reached and drew them out in haste, another Hisa who stood facing outward, shielding them from what lay beyond. They had weapons, lengths of pipe like the men carried. Satin was stunned, felt backward after Bluetooth, to be sure of his presence in this milling, angry throng, in the white lights of humans. There were only Hisa in this hall. They filled the corridor as far as the closed doors at the end. Blood smeared one of the walls, a scent which did not reach them through the masks. Satin rolled a distraught glance in the direction of the press, in the direction that the press was sweeping them, felt a soft hand which was not Bluetooth's close upon her arm and lead her. They passed a door into a human place, vast and dim, the door closed, bringing quiet.
"Hush!"
their guides said. She looked about in panic to see if Bluetooth was still with her, and he reached out to her, caught her hand. They walked nervously in the company of their elder guides through this spacious man-place, oh, so carefully, for fear and for respect to the weapons and the danger and the anger outside. Others, old ones, rose from the shadows and met them.
"Storyteller!"
An old one addressed her, touching her in welcome. Arms embraced her. Others came from beyond a bright, bright doorway and embraced her and Bluetooth, and she was dazed by the honor they gave.
"Come!"
They said, leading her, and they came into that bright place, a room without limits, with a white bed, a sleeping human, and a very old Hisa who crouched by it. Dark and stars were all about, walls which were and were not, and of a sudden great sun peering into the room, upon them and on the dreamer.
Ah,
Satin breathed, dismayed, but the old Hisa rose up and held out hands in welcome.
the storyteller.
Old One was saying, and the oldest of all left the dreamer a moment to embrace her.
Good, good.
The oldest said tenderly. Lily, the dreamer said, and the oldest turned, knelt by the bed to tend her, stroked her grayed head. Marvelous eyes turned on them, still alive in a face white and still, her body shrouded in white, everything white, but the Hisa named Lily and the blackness which expanded all about them, dusted with stars. Sun had vanished. There was only themselves. Lily, the dreamer said again, who are they? At her the dreamer looked, at her, and Lily beckoned. Satin knelt down, and Bluetooth beside her gazed with reverence into the warmth of the dreamer's eyes, the dreamer of the up above, the mate of great sun, who danced upon her walls.
Love,
Oh, there's a mask.
love you,
Satin whispered.
love you, sun she friend.
Love you, the dreamer whispered in her turn. How is it outside? Is there danger?
We make safe.
Old One said firmly.
All the Hisa make safe this place. Men with guns stay away.
They're dead. The wonderful eyes filmed with tears and sought toward Lily. John's doing. Angelo, Damon, Emilio maybe, but not me, not yet. Lily, don't leave me. Lily so carefully put her arm about the dreamer, laid her graying cheek against the dreamer's graying hair.
No, Lily said. Love you, no time leave. No, no, no. Dream they leave, men with guns. Downers all stand you place. Dream to great sun. We you hands and feet. We many, we strong, we quick.
The walls had changed. They looked now upon violence, upon men fighting men, and all of them shrank closer together in dread. It passed, and only the dreamer remained tranquil. Lily, the up above is in danger of dying. It will need the Hisa when the fighting is done. Need you, you understand? Be strong. Hold this place. Stay with me.
We fight mans come here.
Live. They daren't kill you, you understand? Men need the Hisa. They won't come in here. The bright eyes grew dark with passion and gentle again. Sun was back, his awesome face filling all the wall, silencing angers. He reflected in the dreamer's eyes, touched the whiteness with his color.
Ah,
Satin breathed, and swayed from side to side. Others did, one with her, making a soft moan of awe.
she is Satin,
Old One said to the dreamer.
Bluetooth her friend, friend of Bennett man, see he die.
From down below, the dreamer said. Emilio sent you to the up above.
Constantine man you friend? Love he all downers. Bennett man he friend.
Yes, he was.
She say,
Old One said, and in the language of Hisa,
storyteller, sky sees her, make the story for the dreamer, make bright her eyes and warm her dreams, sing it into the dream.
that's dream with a capital D. Heat rose to her face, and her throat grew taut for fear, for a great one she was not, only a maker of little songs, and to tell a tale in human words, in the presence of the dreamer, and of great sun, with all the stars about, to become part of the dream.
Do it.
Bluetooth urged her. His faith warmed her heart.
I sky see she began, come from down below. Tell you Bennett man, tell you Constantine, sing you Hisa things. Dream Hisa things, son she friend, like Bennett make dream. Make he live, make he walk with Hisa, ah, love you, love he. Smile, son, smile, look at he. Long, long time we dream Hisa dreams. Bennett make we see human dream. Show we true things, tell we son, he hold all up above, hold all down below in he arms, and up above she make wide she arms to son, tell we ships come and go, big, big come and go, bring mans from far away dark. Make wide we eyes, make wide make we dream same as humans, son she friend. This thing Bennett give we, and he give he life. He tell we good things in up above, make warm we eyes with want for these good things. We come, we see, so wide, so big dark, we see sun smile in the dark, make the dream for down below, the blue sky. Bennett, make we see, make we come, make we new dreams. Ah, I, Satin, I tell you time humans come. Before humans, no time, only dream. We wait and not know we wait. We see humans and we come to up above. Ah, time Bennett come cold time, and old river she quiet.
The dark, lovely eyes were set upon her, interested, intent upon her words as if she had skill like the old singers. She wove the truth as best she could, making this true, and not the terrible things which were happening elsewhere. Making it truer and truer, that the dreamer might make it truth, that in the turning cycles this truth might come round again as the flowers did, and the rains and all lasting things. Three. Station Central. The boards had stabilized. Station Central had adjusted to panic as perpetual condition, apparent in the fevered attention to details, the refusal of techs to acknowledge the increasing coming and going of armed men in the command center. John patrolled the aisles, scowling, disapproving of any move beyond necessity. Another call from the merchanter Finity's End, a tech told him. Eileen Quen speaking, demands information.
Denied.
Sir,
Denied. Tell them to sit and wait it out. Make no more unauthorized calls. Do you expect us to broadcast information that could aid the enemy?
the tech turned to her work, visibly trying not to see the guns.
Quen.
Young Damon's wife, with the merchanters, already trouble, making demands, refusing to come out. The information had already proliferated, and the fleet had to be picking it up by now from the merchanters in pattern about the station. Mazian knew by now what had happened. Quen with the merchanters and Damon on green section dock. Downers knotted about Alicia's bedside, blocking number 4 cross hall in that area. Let her keep her downer guard. The section door was shut. He folded his hands behind him and tried to look calm. A movement caught his eyes, near the door. Jessad was back after a brief absence, stood there, a silent summons. John walked in that direction, misliking Jessad's grim sobriety.
Any progress?
He asked Jessad, stepping outside.
Located Mr. Cressich, Jessad said. He's here with an escort. Wants a conference.
John scowled, glanced down the hall where Cressich waited with a cluster of guards about him and an equal number of their own security.
Situation as it was with Blue 1-4, Jessad said. Downers still have it blocked. We've got the door. We could decompress.
We need them, John said tautly. Let it be.
For her sake, half measures, Mr. Lucas.
We need the Downers. She's got them. Let be, I said. It's Damon and Quen who are trouble. What are you doing in that regard?
Can't get anyone on that ship. She's not coming out, and they're not opening. As for him, we know where he is. We're working on it.
What do you mean you're working on it?
Cressich's people, Jessad hissed. We need to get through out there, you understand me? Pull yourself together and talk to him. Promise him anything. He's got the mobs in his hand. He can pull the strings. Do it.
John looked at the group in the hall, his thoughts scattering. Cressich, Mazian, the merchanter situation. Union. The Union fleet had to move soon. Had to.
What do you mean, need to get through out there? Do you know where he is or don't you?
Not beyond doubt, Jessad admitted. We turn that mob loose on him, and there won't be enough to identify. And we need to know. Believe me. Talk to Cressich, and hurry about it, Mr. Lucas.
He looked, caught Cressich's eyes, nodded, and the party came closer. Cressich as gray and wretched-looking as ever. But those about him were another matter. Young, arrogant, cocky in their bearing. "The councillor wants a share of this," one said, small, dark-haired man with a scar on his face.
You speak for him?
"Mr. Nino Collody," Cressich identified him, surprising him with a direct answer and a harder look than Cressich had ever mustered in council. "I advise you to listen to him, Mr. Lucas, Mr. Jessad. Mr. Collody heads Q Security. We have our own forces, and we can get order when we ask for it. Are you ready to have it?" John turned a disturbed look on Jessad, obtained nothing. Jessad was blank of comment.
If you can stop the mobs, do it.
Yes, said Jessad quietly. Quiet as this stage would serve us. Quiet at this stage would serve us. Welcome to our council, Mr. Cressich, Mr. Collody.
"Give me calm," Collody said. "General address."
Give it to him,
Jessad said. John drew a deep breath, suddenly with questions trembling on his lips. What kind of game Jessad was playing with him, pushing these two into the inner circle? Jessad's own, as Hale was his? He swallowed the questions, swallowed anger, remembering what was out there, how fragile it all was.
Come with me,
He said, led the way inside, took Collody to the nearest com board. It was too much to hope that Mazian would be easily disposed of. Far too much that it would be easy. The fleet had the area pocketed. Mazian's ships, dotted here and there about the multi-level halo that was the merchanter's orbit about Pell. "Move," he said to a tech, dislodged him, put Collody in that place, and himself punched through to Com Central. Bran Hale's face lit up the screen.
got a call for you to send out, he told Hale. This one goes on general override.
Right,
Hale said.
Mr. Lucas,
Someone called, breaking the general hush in Central. He looked about. Scan screens were flashing Intersect alert.
Where is it?
He exclaimed. Scan had nothing definite. A peppering of yellow haze warned of something incoming, fast. Comp began to siren alarms. There were soft outcries, curses, techs reaching for boards. "Mr. Lucas!" somebody cried, frantic appeal. Part 4. Finity's End. "Scan!" The alarm rang out. Elaine saw the flicker and cast a frantic look at Neihart. "Break us loose," Neihart said, avoiding her eyes. "Go!" The word flashed ship to ship. Elaine gathered herself against the parting jolt. Too late to run for the dock, far too late. Umbilicals were long since shut off, ships grappled to only. A second jolt. They were free, peeling away from station as the whole row of still-docked merchanters followed, counterclockwise around the rim. As any mistake in inside shutdown might mean a ruptured umbilical, as whole sections of dock might decompress. She sat still, feeling the familiar sensations she had thought she might never feel again, free, loose, like the ship, outward bound from what was coming at them, and feeling as if part of her were torn away. A second invader passed. Came zenith and disrupted scan, triggered alarms. Was gone, on its way toward the fleet. They were alive, drifting loose at their helpless slow motion rate, coming out on an agreed course, a general drift of all those undocking. She folded her arm across her belly and watched the screens before her Infinity's command center, thinking on Damon, on all that was back there. Dead, maybe. They said Angelo was dead. Maybe Alicia was. Maybe Damon. Maybe. She hurled the thought at herself, trying to accept it sanely, if it had to be accepted, if there was revenge to be gotten for it. She drew deep breaths, thinking on Estelle, on all her kin. A second time spared, then. A talent for leaving disasters. She had a life in her that was Quen and Constantine at once, names that meant something in the beyond, names which Union would not find comfortable for them in future, that she would give them cause to remember. I'm going to reread that. I mangled the emphasis. I apologize, because that's a dramatic line. She had a life in her that was Quen and Constantine at once, names that meant something in the beyond, names which Union would not find comfortable for them in future, that she would give them cause to remember. "Get us out of here," she said to Neihart, cold and furious. And when he looked at her, seeming amazed by this shift of mind, "Get us out. Run for jump. Pass the word. Mateo's point. Flash the word system-wide. We're leaving. Right through the fleet." She was Quen and Constantine, and Neihart moved. Finity's end overshot the station and kept going, broadcasting instruction to every merchanter near and far in the system. Mazian, Union, Pell, none of them could stop it. Instruments blurred before her eyes, cleared again with a blink. "After Mateo's," she said to Neihart, "we jump again. There'll be others. In deep. Folk who've had enough, who wouldn't come to Pell. We'll find them." "No hope of your own there, Quen." "No," she agreed with a shake of her head. "None of mine. They're gone. But I know coordinates. So do we all. I helped you, kept your holds full, and never questioned your manifests." "Merchanters know it." "So will the fleet know these places. So we hang together, Captain. We move together." Neihart frowned. It was not characteristic of merchanters to be together on anything but a dock-front brawl. "Got a boy on one of Mazian's ships," he said. "I've got a husband on Pell," she said. "What's left now but to settle accounts for this?" Neihart considered it a moment, finally nodded. "The Neiharts will stand by your word." She leaned back, stared at the screen before her. They had scan image, Union in system, ghosts ripping across scan. It was nightmare. Like Mariner, where Estelle and all the other Quens had died, holding to a doomed station too late. Where the fleet had let something through or something had gotten them from within. It was the same thing. Only this time merchanters were not sitting still for it. She watched, resolved to watch scan until the last, to see everything until the station died or they reached jump point, whichever might happen first. Damon, she thought, and cursed Mazian more than Union, who had brought this on them. Part 5. Green Dock. A second time G surged out of balance. Damon made a startled grab for the wall and Josh for him, but it was a minor flux, for all the panicked screams outside the scarred door. Damon turned his back against the wall and rolled a weary shake of his head. Josh asked no questions. None were necessary. Ships had peeled away on the rest of the rim. Even here they could hear the sirens. Breach, it was possible. It was encouraging that they could hear sirens. There was still air out there on the dock. "They're going," Damon said hoarsely. Eileen was away, with those ships. He wanted to believe so. It was the sensible thing. Eileen would have been sensible. Had friends, people who knew her, who would help her, when he could not. She was gone. To come back, maybe, when things settled. If they settled. If he was alive. He did not think he was going to be alive. Maybe Downbelow was all right. Maybe Eileen on those ships. His hope went with them. If he was wrong, he never wanted to know. Gravity fluxed again. The screams and the hammering at the door had stopped. The wide dock was no place to be in a G crisis. Anyone sane had run for smaller spaces. "If the merchanters have bolted," Josh said faintly, "they saw something, knew something. I think Mazian must have his hands full." Damon looked at him, thinking of Union ships, of Josh, one of them.
What's going on out there? Can you reckon?"
Josh's face was drenched with sweat, glistening in the light from the scarred door. He leaned against the wall, lifted a glance at the overhead. "Mazian's liable to do anything. Can't predict. No percentage for Union in destroying this station. It's the stray shot we have to worry about."
We can absorb a lot of shots. We may lose sections, but while we have motive power and the hub intact, we can handle damage."
"With Q loose?" Josh asked hoarsely. Another flux hit them, stomach-wrenching. Damon swallowed, beginning to experience nausea.
While that goes on, we don't have Q to worry about. We've got to chance it. Try to get out of this pocket.
"Go where?
Do what?"
He made a sound deep in his throat, numb, simply numb. He waited for the next G-flux. It failed to strike with its former force. They had begun to get it balanced again. The abused pumps had held, the engines worked. He caught his breath.
"One comfort. We're out of ships to do it to us again. I don't know how many of those we can take."
"They could be waiting out there," Josh said. He reckoned that. He reached a hand up, pushed the switch. Nothing happened. Closed, the door had locked itself. He took his card from his pocket, hesitated, pushed it in the slot, and the buttons stayed dead. If anyone in Central had any desire to know where he was, he had just given the information to them. He knew that. "Looks like we're staying," Josh said. The sirens had stopped. Damon edged over, chanced a look out the scarred window, trying to see through the opaque slashes and the light diffraction. Something stirred far across the docks, one furtive figure, another. The comm overhead gave out a burst of static, as if it were trying to come on, and went silent again. Part 6. Norway. Militia freighters scattered, stationary nightmare. One of them blew like a tiny sun, flared on vid, and died while com pickups sputtered static. The hail of particles incandesced in Norway's path, and some of the bigger ones rang against the hull, a scream of passing matter. No fancy turns, dead-on targets and arms comp lacing into them. A Union rider went out the way the Merchanter had, and Norway's 4 riders rolled, whipped out on a vector concerted with Norway, and pulled fire, a steady barrage that pocked a Union carrier paralleling them for one visible instant. "Get him!" Signy yelled at her arms comper when the fire paused. It erupted over her words and pasted into the spot the running carrier turned out to occupy. What? Oh, there's a hyphen between carrier and turned, not. Oh, gosh. Okay, so the carrier has a broadside facing them. Broadside on. Okay. "Get him!" Signy yelled at her arms comper when the fire paused. It erupted over her words and pasted into the spot the running carrier turned out to occupy. They forced Union to maneuver, to dump G to survive it. A howl of delight went up, and sirens drowned it as Helm jerked control away and sent their own mass into a sudden turn, comp reacting to comp faster than human brains could at such speeds. She hauled it back and paralleled the quarry. Arms comp ripped off another barrage right down the belly array, and whatever came of it, scans started to show a field peppered with haze. "Good!" the belly spotter shouted into comm general. "Solid hit!" There were wails as Norway half rolled and swung into a new zig. Merchanters leaked past them, headed out as if they were a tableau frozen in space. They were doing the moving, whipped through the interstices of that still-standing race, and went after the Union ships, keeping them zigging, keeping them from gathering room for a run. Feint and strike, like their entry, a ship to draw them, attack from another vector. Tibet and North Pole were headed in to intercept, had been coming from the first moment scan image had reached them. Longscan had just revised their position, set them as much closer, reckoning they would go at max. Union moved. That scan had reached them in the same instant, shifted vector right into the fire they were laying down, Norway, Atlantic, Australia. Union lost riders, took damage, going rimward in spite of fire, going at Tibet and North Pole. There was a ringing oath over comm, Mazian's voice pouring out a stream of obscenity. 12 carriers left of the 14 that had come in, a cloud of rider ships and dart ships, bore away from station and into their 2 outrunners that were distance blind and alone out there.
Hit their heels.
Pori's deep voice came back through.
Negative, negative, Mazian snapped back. Hold your positions.
Comp still had them in sync. Europe's command signal drew them unwillingly with Mazian. They watched the Union fleet pass their zone of fire, heading for Tibet and North Pole. Behind them, a flare of energy reached them, static that cleared. "Got him!" comm echoed. Pacific must have taken out that crippled Union carrier some minutes back. There were other things possible across the system that they could lose track of. Could lose Pell. One strike could take it out, if that was Union's intent. Signy flexed a hand, wiped her face, keyed to graph, and he took up controls on the instant. They were dumping velocity again, pulling maneuvers in concert with Mazian. Protests garbled over comm. "Negative," Mazian repeated. There was a hush throughout Norway. "They haven't a chance," Graf muttered too audibly. "They should have come in sooner. Should have come in."
Hindsight, Mr. Graf. Take it as it falls.
Signy dialed up general comm.
Can't move out of here. If it's a feint, one ship could come in and wipe Pell. We can't help them. Can't risk any more of us than we're already about to lose. They've got an option. They've still got room to run.
Might, she was thinking, might, the instant their scan narrowed on them, and long scan started showing what they were into. Veer off and jump. If scan techs on Tibet and North Pole fed the right data into long scan, if the picture on their scopes did not show Mazian and help coming right on Union's tail, misinterpreting their maneuver as one of following. The fleet slowed farther. Scan showed a fade-out among the merchanters, that slow-motion flight having reached jump limit. They bled away, Pell's life, drifting off into the deep. She dead-reckoned time factors, Union's speed, proliferation of their image, Tibet's and North Pole's velocity incoming. About now, Tibet should be figuring it out, realizing Union was on them. If their scan was telling them truth. Their own scan kept showing history for a moment, then locked up, stationary, long scan having run out of speculations. Head to head, yellow haze, while red lines tracked through that haze, the real scan they were getting. Closer. The red line reached decision critical. Kept going. Head on. Signy sat and watched, as all of them had to watch. Her fist was clenched, and she restrained herself from hitting something, the board, the cushion, something. It happened. They watched it happen. What had happened already, the futile defense, the overwhelming assault. 2 carriers. 7 riders to a man. In 40 and more years, the fleet had never lost ships so wretchedly. Tibet rammed. Kant hurled his carrier into jump near the mass of his enemies and took his own riders and a Union carrier into oblivion. There was a sudden gap in scan, a grim cheer at that, and again when North Pole and her riders hurtled through the midst of the Unioners. They almost made it through Kant's hole. Then that image became a scatter of images. North Pole's comp signal that had begun ascending ceased abruptly. Signy had not cheered, only nodded slowly each time to no one in particular, remembering the men and women aboard, names known, despising the situation they were handed. Longscan resolved itself, question answered. The surviving images that were Union kept on running, hit jump, vanished from the screens. The Unioners would be back, reinforced, eventually, simply calling in more ships. The fleet had won, had held on, but now they were 7. 7 ships. And the next time, and the next, it would happen. Union could sacrifice ships. Union ships prowled the fringes of the system, and they dared not go out hunting them. "We've lost," she addressed Mazian silently. "Do you know that? We've lost."
Pell, Mazian's voice came quietly over calm, is under riot conditions. We do not know the situation there. We are faced with disorder. Hold pattern. We cannot rule out another strike.
But suddenly lights flashed on Norway's boards. A whole sector sprang to renewed independence. Norway was loosed from comp sync. Orders flashed to the screen. Comp sent. Secure base. She was loosed. Africa was. 2 ships to go back and take a disordered station while the rest of them kept to their perimeter and room to maneuver. She punched General Comm.
"Die, arm, and suit. We've got to take ourselves a berth. Every trooper we've got on the line. Suit Alderday, crew to guard the docks. We're going in after the troops we had to leave."
A shout erupted from that link, many-voiced, angry, frustrated troops suddenly needed again, in something they were hot to do.
"Graf,"
she said. They red-lighted despite the troops in prep below, pulled stress in coming about, and headed dead on for the station. Pori's Africa pulled out of pattern in her wake. For what it's worth, that scene, and there might be one other, is still possibly to this day my favorite depiction of, or one of my favorite depictions of ship to ship combat in space. It's very hectic. It's like you're receiving information on a delay. You're reacting as quickly as you possibly can. Um, it's just great. It's very visceral. She just nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. Definitely one of my faves. Part 7, Pell Central.
Give us docking access, Mallory's voice came over comm, and open doors to Central, or we start taking out sections of this station.
Collision, the screens flashed. White-faced techs sat at their posts, and John gripped the back of the chair at comm, paralyzed in the realization of carriers hurtling dead at Pell's midline. "Sir!" someone screamed. Vid had them, shining masses filling all the screen, monsters bearing down on them. A wall of dark finally that split apart and passed the cameras above and below station. Boards erupted in static, and sirens wailed as the carriers skimmed their surface. One vid went out, and a damage alarm went off, a wail of depressurization alert. John spun about, sought Jessad, who had been near the door. There was only Crescich, mouth agape in the wail of sirens.
We're waiting for an answer,
Another, deeper voice said out of comm. Jessad gone. Jessad or someone had failed at Mariner and the station had died.
Find Jessad! John shouted at one of Hale's men. Get him! Take him out!
They're coming in again! A tech cried. John whirled, stared at the screens, tried to talk, and gestured wildly.
Comlink!
He shouted, and the tech passed him a mic. He swallowed, staring at the oncoming behemoths on vid.
You have access,
He shouted into the mic as he tried to control his voice.
Repeat, this is Pell Station Master Lucas. You have access.
Say again, Mallory's voice returned to him. Who are you?
John Lucas, acting station master. Angelo Constantine is dead. Please help us.
There was silence from the other side. Scan began to alter, the big ships diverting from near collision course, dumping velocity perceptibly.
Our riders will dock first, Mallory's voice declared. Do you copy, Pell Station? Riders will dock in advance to serve as carrier dock crews. You give them an assist in it, and then clear out of their way or face fire. For every trouble we meet, we blow a hole in you.
We have riot conditions aboard, John pleaded. Q has broken confinement.
Do you copy my instructions, Mr. Lucas?
Pell copies clearly. Do you understand our problem? We can't guarantee there'll be no trouble. Some of our docks are sealed off. We accept your troops and assistance. We are devastated by riot. You will have our cooperation.
There was long hesitation. Other blips had come into scan, the riders which attended the carriers.
We copy, Mallory said. We will board with troops. Get my number 1 rider safely docked with your cooperation, or we will blow ourselves an access for troops and blow section by section. No survivors. That is your clear choice.
We copy.
John wiped at his face. The sirens had died. There was a deathly hush in the command center.
Give me time to get what security I can muster to the most secure docks. Over.
You have half an hour, Mr. Lucas.
He turned from comm, waved a summons to one of his security guards by the door.
Pell copies. Half an hour. We'll get you a dock clear.
Blue and green, Mr. Lucas. You see to it.
Blue and green docks, he repeated hoarsely. We'll do our best.
Mallory signed off. He pushed past comm to key in the main comm center.
Hale! He exclaimed. Hale!
Hale's face appeared.
General broadcast. All security to docks. Get blue and green docks clear for operation.
Got it, Hale said, and keyed out. John strode across the room to the doorway where Kressich still stood.
Get back on comm. Get on and tell those people you claim to control to stay quiet. Hear?
Kressich nodded. There was a distractedness in his eyes, a not quite sanity. John seized him by the arm and dragged him to the comm board as the tech scrambled out of the way. He set Kressich down, gave him the mic, stood listening as Kressich addressed his lieutenants by name, calling on them to clear the affected docks. Panic persisted in the corridors where they still had cameras to see. Green 9 showed milling throngs and smoke, and whatever they cleared, panicked mobs would pour into like air into vacuum.
General alert, John said to the chief at Station 1. Sound the null G warning.
The woman turned, opened the security casing, punched the button beneath. A buzzer began to sound, different and more urgent than all other warnings which had wailed through Pell's corridors. Seek a secure place, a voice interrupted at intervals. Avoid large open areas. Go to the nearest compartment and seek an emergency hold. Should extreme gravity loss occur, remember the orientation arrows and observe them as station stabilizes. Seek a secure place. Panic in the halls became headlong flight, battering at doors, screaming.
Throw G off, John said to the op coordinator. Give us a variation they can feel out there.
Orders flashed. A third time the station destabilized. Green 9 corridors began to show clear as people raced for smaller spaces, even smaller corridors. John punched through to Hale again.
Get forces out there. Get those docks clear. I've given you your chance, confound you.
Sir, Hale said, and winked out again. John turned full circle, looked distractedly at the techs, at Lee Quayle, who clung to a handhold by the door. He signaled Quayle, caught his sleeve, and hauled him close when he came.
The unfinished business, he said, down on Green Dock. Get down there and finish it, understand? Finish it.
Yes, sir, Quayle breathed, and fled, with sense enough to know, surely, that their lives rested on it. Union might win. Until then, they claimed station neutrality, hold on to what they could. John paced the aisle, catching at chairs and counters in the occasional strong flux, trying to keep the whole center from panic. He had Pell. He had already what Union had promised him, and would have it under Maziani and under Union too, if he was careful, and he had been, far more than Jessad had ordered him to be. There were no witnesses left alive in Angelo's office, none in legal affairs, abortive as that raid had been. Only Alicia, who knew nothing, who harmed no one, who had no voice, and her sons. Damon was the danger. Damon and his wife. Over Quen he had no control, but if young Damon started making charges... He cast a look over his shoulder, suddenly missed Kressich and two who were supposed to be watching him. The desertion of his own enraged him. Of Kressich, he was relieved. Kressich would vanish back into the hordes of Q, frightened and unreachable. Only Jessad. If they had not gotten him, if he was loose, near something vital... On scan, riders were moving closer. Pell had yet a little time before Mazian's troops hit. A tech handed him positive ID on the ships that waited out there. Mallory and Pori, Mazian's two executioners. They had a name, the one for ruthlessness and the other for enjoying it. Pori was the other one, then. That was no good news. He stood and sweated, waiting. Part 8. Green Dock. Something was going on outside. Damon walked over the littered floor of the dark shop and leaned there, trying again to see out the scarred window, jerked as the red explosion of a shot distorted the scratches. There was screaming mingled in with the grinding of machinery in operation.
Whoever's out there now, they're moving this way and they've got guns.
He edged back from the door, moving carefully in the lessened G. Josh stooped, gathered up one of the rods that had been part of a ruined display, offered it. Damon took it, and Josh got another for himself. He moved up near the doorway, and Josh went to the other side of it, back to the wall. There was no sound near them outside, a lot of shouting far away. Damon risked a look, the light coming from the other way, jerked back again at the sight of human shadows near the scarred window. The door whipped open, carded from outside, someone with priority. Two men dashed in, guns drawn. Damon slammed the steel rod down on a head, eyes unfocusing for the horror of it, and Josh hit from the other side. The men fell strangely in the low G, and a gun skittered loose. Josh scooped it up, fired twice to be sure, and one jerked, dying. "Get the gun!" Josh snapped, and Damon bent and pushed fastidiously at the body, found the unfamiliar plastic of the gun butt in a dead hand. Josh was on his knees, rolled the other body, began to strip it. "Clothes," Josh said. "Cards. IDs that work." Damon laid the gun aside and swallowed his distaste, stripped the limp body, took off his own suit, struggled into the bloody coveralls. There would be men aplenty in the corridors with bloodstains on them. He searched the pockets for a card, found the papers there, found the card lying where the body's left hand had dropped it. He canted the ID folder to the light. Lee Anton Quayle, Lucas Company. Quayle. Quayle from the Downbelow mutiny. And John Lucas's employ. In John's employ, and John had comp in his control. When Q happened to get the doors open, when Constantine's happened to have been murdered in Pell's tightest security, when his card stopped working and murderers knew how to locate him, it was John up there. A hand closed on his shoulder. "Come on, Damon!" He rose, flinched as Josh used his gun to burn Quayle's face beyond recognition, the other corpse afterward. Josh's own face was sweat-slicked in the light from the door, rigid with horror. But the reactions were right, a man whose instincts knew what they were doing. He headed for the dock, and Damon ran with him, out into the light, slowed at once, for the docks were virtually bare. White dock seal was in place. The seal of green dock was hidden up the horizon. They walked gingerly across the front of the huge seal of white, got in among the gantries across the dock, walked along within that cover, while the horizon unfolded downward, showing them a group of men working at the docking machinery, moving slowly and carefully in reduced G. Corpses and papers and debris lay scattered all across the docks, out in open spaces which would be difficult to reach without being seen. "Enough cards lying out there," Josh said, "to give us plenty of names."
"For any lock not voice-keyed,"
Damon muttered. He kept his eye to the men at work and those standing guard down by the green Niner entry, visible at this range. Walked out carefully to the nearest corpse, hoping it was a corpse and not someone dazed or shamming. He knelt, still watching the workers, felt through the pockets and came up with a card and additional papers. He pocketed them and went to the next, while Josh plundered others. Then nerves sent him scurrying back to cover, and Josh joined him at once. They moved further up the dock.
"Blue seal is open,"
he said, as that arch came down off horizon. He entertained a wild, momentary hope of hiding, getting to Blue Sector when the traffic in the corridors returned to normal, getting up to Blue 1 and asking questions at gunpoint. It was fantasy. They were not going to live that long. He did not reckon they would.
Damon,
He looked, followed the direction Josh indicated, up through the gantry lines to the first berth in green. Green light. A ship was in approach. Whether Mazians or Unions, there was no telling. Calm thundered out, echoing instructions in the emptiness. The ship was closing with the docking cone, coming in fast. "Come on!" Josh hissed at him, pulling his arm, insisting on a break for Green 9.
The G isn't going, he murmured, resisting Josh's urging. Don't you see it's a trick? Central's got the corridors cleared for their own forces to move in them. Those ships wouldn't dock with G completely unstable. No way they'd risk that with a big ship. Just a little flux to quell the riot. And it won't stay cleared. If we run into those corridors, we'll be in the middle of it. No, stay put.
ECS 501, he heard over the loudspeaker then, and his heart lifted.
One of Mallory's riders, Josh muttered at his side. Mallory. Union's retreated.
He looked at Josh, at the hate which burned in the angel's haggard face. Hope canceled. The minutes passed. The ship snugged in. The dock crew ran to secure the umbilicals, thrust the connections in. The access slammed into seal with a hiss audible across the empty distance. Machinery whined and slammed beyond it, the lock in function, and the dockside crew started running. A handful of men poured out of the obscuring periphery of the gantries, unarmored, two running across to the far side to take up position with rifles leveled. There was the sound of others running, and calm was on again, warning of Norway itself inbound.
Get your head down,
Josh hissed, and Damon moved slowly, knelt by the brace of one of the movable tanks where Josh had taken closer cover. Tried to see what was happening farther up, but there was a skein of umbilicals in the way. Mallory was using her own men for dock crews, but John Lucas must still be in command up in Central. Cooperating with Maziani, and in the presence of Union attack, Maziani would choose efficiency over justice. Go out there, approach armed and nervous company troops, raise a charge of murder and conspiracy while John Lucas physically held Central and Station, and Maziani had Union on his mind?
I could go out there, he said, unsure of his conclusions.
They'd swallow you alive, Josh said. You've nothing to offer them.
He looked at Josh's face. Of the gentleman adjustment had turned out, there was nothing left, but perhaps the pain. Set him at a comp board, Josh had said once, and he might remember comp. Set him to war, and he had other instincts. Josh's thin hands clutched the gun between his knees, and his eyes were set on the arch of the dock, where Norway was moving in to dock. Hate. His face was pale and intense. He might do anything. Damon felt the butt of the pistol in his own right hand, shifted his grip on it, moved his forefinger onto the trigger. An adjusted Unioner, whose adjustment was coming undone, who hated, who might go on coming apart. It was a day for murders, when the dead out there were too many to count, when there were no rules left, no kinships, no friendships. War had come to Pell, and he had lived naive all his life. Josh was dangerous, had been trained to be dangerous, and nothing they had done to his mind had changed that. Com announced arrival. There was the boom of contact. Josh swallowed visibly, eyes fixed. Damon reached with his left hand, caught Josh's arm.
Don't do anything. Hear me? You can't reach her.
Don't intend to, Josh said without looking at him. Only so you have as good sense.
He let the gun to his side, finger slowly removed from the trigger, the taste of bile in his mouth. Norway was in solidly now, a second crashing of locks and joinings, a seal hissing into Union. That's with a lowercase u, not the uppercase U of Union. It's a different union. They're unifying, not a political body. Where were we? A second crashing of locks and joinings, a seal hissing into Union. Troops boiled out onto the dock, formed up with shouts of orders, took up positions relieving the rifle-bearing crewmen, armored figures, alike and implacable. And of a sudden there was another figure from high up the curve. A shout, and other troops came from the recess of shops and offices along that stretch, from bars and sleepovers, troops left behind, rejoining their comrades of the fleet, carrying their wounded or dead with them. There was reunion, a wavering in the disciplined lines that took them in, embracings and cheers raised. Damon pressed as close to the concealing machinery as he could, and Josh shrank down beside him. An officer bellowed orders, and the troops started to move in order from the docks toward the Green Nine entry, and while some held it with leveled rifles, some advanced within it. Damon shifted back, farther and farther within the shadows, and Josh moved with him. Shouts reached them, the echoing bellow of a loudspeaker. "Clear the corridor!" Suddenly there were shouts and screams and firing. Damon leaned his head against the machinery and listened, eyes shut. Once and twice felt Josh flinch at the now familiar sounds, and did not know whether he did also. It's dying, he thought with exhausted calm, felt tears leak from his eyes. He shivered finally. Call it what they would, Mazian had not won. There was no possibility that the outnumbered company ships had beaten off Union for good. It was only a skirmish, decision postponed. There would be more such, until there was no more fleet and no more company, and what became of Pell would be in other hands. Jump had outmoded the great star stations. There were worlds now, and the order and priority of things had changed. The military had seen it. Only the Constantins had not. His father had not, who had believed in a way neither company nor union, but Pell's, that kept the world it circled in trust, that disdained precautions within itself, that valued trust above security, that tried to lie to itself and believe that Pell's values could survive in such times. There were those who could shift from side to side, play any politics going. John Lucas could do so, evidently had. If Mazian had sense to judge men, he would surely see what John Lucas was and reward him as he deserved. But Mazian did not need honest men, only men who would obey him and impose Mazian's kind of law. And John would come out a survivor on either side. It was his own mother's stubbornness, that refusal to die. His own, maybe, that did not seek approach to his uncle, whatever he had done. Maybe Pell needed a governor in these latter days who could shift and survive, trading what had to be traded. Only he could not. If he and John in front of him now, hate. Hate of this measure was a new experience. A helpless hate, like Josh's. But there was revenge, if he lived. Not to harm Pell, but to make John Lucas's sleep less than easy. While a single Constantine was loose, any holder of Pell had to feel less secure. Mazian, Union, John Lucas, none of them would own Pell until they had gotten him, and that he could make it difficult for them for as long as possible. And that he could make difficult for them for as long as possible. Much better. All righty, Rooney. That is where we will leave it for this week, I think. How long is next week's segment going to be? Yeah, that'll be fine. All right. So yeah, things have heated up in a big way this week. Oh shoot, I didn't realize it was that zoomed out. Give me a sec. Let me finagle this real quick. I'm not going to finagle it. You can zoom in. You can use like a Windows screen enhancing thing if you really want to see the details there. I wish my edition of the book my copy of the book had those. That would be wonderful because I could read out what it says in greater detail. I'm going to have to look into that hardcover that I saw floating around. Really nice looking. And had all that in there. But yeah, things have really escalated in a big way. I mean, Mazian's fleet is getting just slammed. They're having a bad time. And chaos continues. Unfortunate that Angelo Constantin is gone, as are a number of other characters. We'll see. We'll see how things go from here. I had something intelligent and pithy. It is gone now, so we're gonna just leave it with that. Stay safe, stay sane, be decent to each other, and hope you enjoyed. Yeah. Talk to you later. Oh, that's what I can do. I can post those on the Discord. Easy. Why didn't I think of that? I'll get copies of those diagram images posted up there, so we can do that. Alrighty. Until next time, this Friday, when we will be continuing Death's End by Shijin Liu, where I think we find out what was going on in the prologue, actually. Oh, actually, things take just a dramatic turn in general. Things take a dramatic turn this Friday in Death's End. Things get crazy. Um, but only the first things get crazy out of many. It is a book about escalation. And then things escalated is kind of the byline of a lot of the series, and Death's End embodies that. Anyway, I'll leave you all to it, and I'll see you next time. Toodaloo!